It's really hard for me to remember a time when grief wasn't somewhere around the edges. It's always been a part of my existence because my parents were both Holocaust survivors. They were Jewish, and so they were in their late teens and early 20s when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. They ended up, both of them, in the Warsaw Ghetto, which was where the Germans put Jews in Warsaw into smaller and smaller areas. And then eventually the plan was to send them all to death camps, to extermination camps, some labor, people call them concentration camps. Mother's father was beaten to death by the Gestapo, by German soldiers. My father's father died of typhus, which was a common illness in the ghetto. There was very poor hygiene and health and nutrition, and they ended up, through their grief, they ended up dating, falling in love to some extent or another. It's such a twisted story in some ways, and then they went through the process where the rest of their family was systematically killed, died, or were taken by train, by cattle car, to Treblinka, or one of the concentration camps, the extermination camps, and killed. So these are stories that my parents told us from the moment I can remember, that it was an important part of our heritage. I think for so many Jews, there's just this strain throughout our history of being kicked out of one place or another, of being slaughtered, being persecuted for practicing a particular religion. And that's embedded in our souls. It becomes a part of the expression. I mean, if you know Yiddish, if you hear certain kinds of songs, the melodies, the violin, the clarinet, there's a wailing to it. There's lament to it. My parents were part of a Warsaw Ghetto resistance organization that would put on a commemoration, a remembrance of the Holocaust and the victims every year in New York City, Temple Emmanuel on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And while they would help organize that, my sisters and I would be, nearby reading or being with other children, and we would hear all of these stories. And so it's just embedded. I graduated from college in June of 1981. And I think it was that fall that the New York Times and some other papers started reporting about these mysterious illnesses and then deaths of gay men in particular. And it wasn't long before the LGBTQ, the queer community, was consumed with AIDS and HIV. And that, I think that for me, brought up again some of what had just been in my bones. And then people I loved started dying. And no one seemed to care. And that, I think that came together with hearing the stories about how when millions of Jews and other people were being sent to concentration camps, no one in the rest of the world seemed to care. I've just spent time, I've just been talking about how grief has always been present for me, and certainly it seems to be a core part of being Jewish, that sort of plaintive sense of loss. But until my mother died, and she died, it's been over 15 years. Until she died, I don't think I had ever felt that sense of personal and overwhelming loss where you're not sure how you move forward. Honestly, I think if I didn't have my two sisters, I'm not sure how I would have been able to get past that kind of grief. Jews have specific rituals and traditions around death, but Jews do something called Shiva, sitting Shiva. Shiva is represents the number 7, and so for 7 days, the family of the person they're mourning is at home, and then they welcome visitors who bring food and tell stories about that person, and you remember and you honor your dead. I think it's very important in most cultures to do that in one way or another. So, you have this moment to take a pause, to not just hurry on with the busyness of life, but to remember. My father, he carried a little bit of food, a little cheese sandwich or crackers or something in his pocket, because you never know when the next world war is coming. You never know when your next meal is going to be. And those reminders were all about just the fragility of life. And I think everybody responds to that differently, and how you live your life in the face of really just the specter of death. For me, it's made me just want to be in and build community, to be with other people, and to address some of the injustices in the world, and that's how I honor the dead, my dead. Just generally, when I think about Jews or queers who have been persecuted and killed or died, of old age or cancer, that's how I like to honor their memories.